sales planning and execution. All right, and today we're really excited. Today's guest host is Collin Campbell. He's an internet pioneer since 1993. Mr. Campbell and his partners have built several internet companies, which today have a market value of greater than $1 billion. They include Two Cows Interactive, a taught software download site and leading domain and telecom business. Internet Direct Canada, Inc., Canada's largest internet service provider. Hostopia, a global leader in providing hosting and email platforms to telecoms such as AT&T and Earthlink. Geeksforless.com, an 800-person global software development center. And the list goes on. I just want to keep going. Now, let me tell you some of his awards he has with some of these companies. He's awarded Canada's Profit Magazine's 7th fastest growing company, Canada's #1 fastest growing company, top registry of the year for .club. I remember that. That's a good one. .club, and Inc.'s 5,000 fastest growing companies in several of his companies. And again, I could just keep going on and on. Welcome to the Sales Transformation Podcast, live out of Miami, Fort Lauderdale, with your host, Victor Arocho. If you haven't yet, please follow me on Twitter at varocho.com or varocho. Also on YouTube, you can go to Victor Arocho, or you can head over to victorarocho.com. That's VICTORAROCHO.com. Well, Collin, I really appreciate you coming to the show. Welcome to the show.
When a number of those companies you mentioned we were launching, and I think a lot of that has to do with I've learned along the way how to build better organizations with better systems. And I have a lot more people around me to support me in a number of the ventures that I'm working on today.
That's awesome. And you wanted to tell me a little bit about, these companies and, how they came about and, your input.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll try to relate that back to, sort of the sales story behind each of them. Back in the 90s between, Two Cows and Internet Direct, it was really a B2C environment. It's interesting to see that in B2C versus B2B have very different sales approaches. I would say that in the B2C, it was very much a scripted environment, really getting the scripts right. Generally a lower cost employee on environments like that. When you get into B2B, the contracts tend to be very large, and you tend to focus on hiring really good salespeople who can deliver on big results. And
you found that there's multiple decision makers in the big B2B deals, right?
Oh, it's funny you say that. I mean, there's so many different things that we did to try to get those deals. For instance, you start with that cold call, and we had a really neat trick at Hostopia in that we would send them a fax. And even today, I think this could be effective because it goes to fax to email. Sending an email as a cold call, it might be the worst. Maybe a LinkedIn might be better. Making a phone call, but the key was that we would call the top, office in the company, CEO, and these are telecoms. These are huge telecoms. Of course, you're going to get a receptionist, and you would ask the receptionist, what kind of who's the individual who runs this division that we can talk to, and she would give you a name. And then you would contact that individual and you say, well, no, I was just talking to the president's office and they recommended I call you. And I'd like to send you a fax that shows all of the products that we're offering and testimonials by your competitors. And we would send that fax over to them. And it had a pretty big impact, just getting things started. But it's interesting you say that there are a number of people who make a decision. So identifying the influencers in a large organization is mega deals. And when I say mega deals, I mean, I'm talking like the deal with Earthlink was probably worth about $10 million to the company. So we're talking about huge deals in the software space with huge margins, right? So you're going to put everything you got into making that deal happen. And that means contacting or identifying all of the influencers around the decision maker, but then also working very closely with your hero. Once you've got that individual at that organization who you think will be your hero, the key to winning that sale is that you actually make that person look like a success. Now, he or she's biggest fear especially when we're talking about software and platforms, is losing their job if something goes wrong with the launch or the migration. That's their number one fear. And the number one thing that stops companies from getting deals is the fear of loss of their job of the individual, or the fact that they might get demoted or something that goes wrong with this sales process, with the launch. It's not opportunity. And that's the interesting thing. Like, the opportunity we had when we would present these individuals were huge. But when you're talking about big companies, their biggest concern is their job. So the first big lesson I learned on doing B2B sales was that you're not trying to sell a company, you're trying to sell an individual, and you want to protect their job and make them look like a hero.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you know, we deal with only B2B, and we deal with a lot of tech companies, and that's one of the techniques that we like to use. You know, when you're dealing with a champion or an influencer, you know, I always suggest to our sales teams or the people that we develop is, look, Colin, my job is to make you look like a superstar. Right? You need to make them feel comfortable and how it's going to impact them, their career. And you also have to, that's a great point that you said about, you know, the person that you're talking to who is involved in the decision or influencing the decision has to also worry about, this better be a good decision, especially for $10 million. Right?
That's right,
so
exactly.
They don't want to be the fallback person if that doesn't work, right? And obviously there's risk in everything that you do, but I guess as professionals in sales, you want to kind of mitigate those risks or reduce those risks for them, because obviously you want to sell them something that works, but also you got to make them feel comfortable, both with the fact that I'm looking for you to look like a superstar. I'm hoping this affects your career and impacts your career and the company. I always like to do cost justification, right? Or return on investment, right? What's that investment going to gain for you and the company as it goes forward? And then you obviously you need all the decision makers in the room, but the cycle is long, right? Particularly if you have a longer sales cycle or you have a shorter sales cycle, depending on what you have, because I'm assuming at $10 million, that cycle's at least 6 months or greater, no?
Oh yeah, it was actually, our sales cycles were as much as, you know, from 1 year to 4 years, and we would never stop working. I think VeriSign took about 4 years to close. And let me tell you something else about that story, and to try to you know, explain a little bit more about this idea about the employee losing their job. I got a call from this was after we had sold Hostopia to Deluxe Communications, and the CEO of Deluxe called me up and said, we're going to lose the deal. And I said, why is that? Well, because they want to go with a bigger company with a more well-known brand. And so we came up with an idea, and what we were doing is, you know, we were trying to win a contract to move over 80,000 websites and hundreds of thousands of email addresses. And what we decided to do is come up with a guarantee. We guaranteed that company and that individual that we would pay them $300 per customer loss. So we gave them a 100% guarantee that we could move over and migrate all of those websites. And by doing that guarantee, that individual was able to go to their bosses and say, look, this company's doing a 100% guarantee. So we're protected, and we're financially protected as well, whereas this company isn't. Now, it sounds a little bit scary when you're into the migration and software space like that, but the fact of the matter is you have to identify the number one pain point for the decision makers. And if you can address that, and like in the way that we did by creating a guarantee, backing it up financially, and of course, it really changed our organization internally as well. I will say that as well. It's not easy. But by doing that, we were able to win that contract. And from that contract, it was a dominoes that just kept going down. We won AT&T, we won Vodafone, we won all the rest of them. And our competitors couldn't believe that we would offer that kind of guarantee. It's all about
that's awesome.
Employees, not about the opportunity in that company.
Right. I agree. And you even offered greater than just a guarantee. You also put skin in the game. I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, you don't pay me, right? But you went as far as, not only will you not pay me, I'm going to pay you for each one that I don't do, right?
Yeah, and we had
so I think that's super impactful.
We had operations to back us up. This actually became our X factor in our company. And we had 300 people in the Ukraine who would manage these migration processes. And I believe we were the best at the world, and probably today the company is still the best at the world at providing these services and migrating these services for telecoms.
Well, that's incredible. I've been involved in a few conversions and migrations, and I don't care whether it's phone systems or technology. I mean, there's always hiccups along the way, right? Anytime you're moving over from a major platform to another platform, even phone systems. I mean, you know, back, you know, they've changed now. It's a little bit more easier, but you know, back several years ago, you know, moving from one major telecom company to another major telecom company without being down, it's not easy. And you mentioned Vertafore. You know I'm very familiar with Vertafore coming from the insurance industry, but that's like an example converting over from one deal.
And top people in the organizations do not want to be sold. They want to be talked. You know, they want you to talk to them. They want you to share with them the challenges. They want you to be open and honest with them. The last thing you should do, if you are a salesperson by nature and you built your company up, is to try to sell another CEO. The most important thing you can do is to try to connect with that CEO at a higher level than you would with, you know, trying to sell.
For our listeners out there, as Colin was stating, you know, you want to bring your CEO and you're going to relate with the CEO. You had your CTO. When we go out to a business dinner, a lot of my partners and associates are used to me, like, literally positioning everywhere and who I want to sit where, right? Because if not, then you have your company on one side, their company on one side. I like to strategically, if I'm setting it up or not, it really doesn't matter. I want to put my Colin next to the CEO, their CEO, right? My CTO next to their engineering person, right? It's almost like every other person in the and make sure you have the right conversations going on, particularly if you have, you know, you're equal to the client or the prospective client you're meeting with. They have a finance person there. They got their COO there, the CTO there, the CEO there. Take control of the seating because you want the great conversations to have. And that's one. The second part is I always try to go to the restaurant myself and try to find or go to the restaurant that has the table I want. I want a big round table. I want a very large square table, right? Because I don't want the long tables. The discussions are limited.
That's amazing because nothing in life happens by accidents, especially when you're trying to do huge contracts. Like I used to say $1 million contracts, like millions of dollars are at stake. And it's amazing how, you know, people can think very ad hoc. A couple of stories, you know, one, we had a huge client they have 93% market share for domains they distribute in Japan. And we were meeting up with them in LA. And we knew that we understood the gentleman, we understood who he was, and he likes to be seen and whatnot. So it's interesting you say about the restaurant. The lady that worked for me, she called him up and said, you know, and in LA it can be tough to sometimes get seating. And she asked for a very nice table, round table, and the best spot that they had in the because you know the best. And he goes, oh, can we know who's coming? I said, well, I'm not allowed to tell you. And of course, they now thought, okay, this person's got, you know, celebrity, you know, you know, whoever, some huge person coming to the restaurant. And we were able to get just a phenomenal table. And you're right, it was round. And every person who goes into the meeting, it's not ad hoc. Their positioning is done correctly. And also, let me say this, when it comes to getting big deals, when it comes to planning, we had something which we called were 5 winning moves. These 5 for each prospect that we were targeting. Remember, these deals were huge, and we would spend a lot of time planning how to approach and how to attack that particular client. So for instance, at Hostopia, it was all about, you know, imagine trying to get AT&T. It's a huge company.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're on our prospect list. And we took literally at every quarterly planning session, it wasn't just the salesperson. This was all of the executive saying, what are the 5 moves, winning moves we can make to win over that contract? And at Club, it was exactly the same thing. And even this, we're going into a planning session in 2 weeks from now. What are the 5 winning moves we can make to win over new distribution channels? And we identify who they are. And then we think about that individual channel and we build strategies around that channel. And that includes the influencers, that includes PR, that includes like anything you can do to win that deal. Do whatever it takes to win it. So what are the 5 winning moves, and bring your entire executive team into that process.
That's excellent. You know, and that is key, and especially for large deals or B2B deals.
I was going to say, and you know, the CTO, the COO, or the operations person, or the technical person in your office, they need to get involved in those conversations in B2B, because more often than not, let's say you have a programmer that runs your programming team, or even if it's just your only programmer, and you're trying to sell a platform, and you go to that company and they bring in their IT person. And do you think a salesperson can connect with an IT person? They're like the most opposite people in the world. Do you think an IT person can connect with an IT person? So don't be afraid to pull everyone and anyone into a sales meeting within your organization. These meetings, you know, often are not that long. They don't take up that much energy. And I know that operators and technology people sometimes have an aversion to these types of situations. But honestly, the worst salesperson in some cases is the salesperson when it comes to selling to technology people. You got to bring in the right people.
No, I agree. And also they get a different perspective. And sometimes the salesperson, the sales leader, one may not have the power to make a decision in that department, and that person who's involved in that meeting can, and they may give you an insight to get the deal, right? You have different people looking at it from a different perspective, as long as they feel that they're involved. Where I've seen people that come into those meetings that they don't like going to those meetings is because no one gets them involved. They don't ask their opinion, right? It's 2 people having a conversation and there's 6 people in the room. That's a challenge for me, right? If you're going to bring people in to get their opinion, there's no idea that's a bad idea. It's just a matter of which idea we're going to choose that makes the best sense. There's no ego in the room.
On the note of no ego, so we're trying to close the Earthlink deal. We talked about that earlier. It was a $10 million deal. And we got a call from the CEO saying that they're looking at going with the other competitor. So the CTO and I got on a plane. We flew to Atlanta. And we met the gentleman. He says, "Oh, don't worry about coming. No, we're coming down. We're coming down." We came down. We talked to the couple of decision makers. The sponsor, our hero, that day said, "Oh, let's go to lunch." And he goes, "But the only issue is I only have 1 seat in the car, because it was one of the first electric vehicles that ever came out. It was called a Wego." So I literally, I put my CTO in the front, because he connected better on the technology side. And I sat in this little trunk of the Wego and drove to the restaurants. A week later, we got the deal. No ego.
Oh my God. That is hilarious. No, I agree. Put the right people, connect with the right people.
And the pipeline meeting is another good example of where you need to bring in your operator and your technology and, even your finance and even your legal sometimes, depending on the organization. Because more often than not, a lot of the sales team or the salespeople get stuck on one component or 2. And when they get stuck, if they can get the advice or help of somebody within the organization to move that forward, then the deal can move forward. So for instance, you might have a sale, you're doing, you're trying to sell a product or you're trying to sell a service, and they get an objection that says, well, the fact of the matter is we can't do this because we're only 99.9%. And so that salesperson shares the objection with your team and says, okay, this is where we're stuck, that they've said this 99% is not high enough. They want more than that. And then the CTO says, okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'll commit to 100%. And that now gives the salesperson the ability to go back and say, okay, I had the CTO, I've met with the CTO, and we can now commit to 100%. The fact of the matter is salespeople get stuck. The people who can help them get unstuck are the executives within that organization in a lot of cases. So again, a salesperson is not the only person who closes the deals. He's only a conduit to help close the deals. And you really do need a team approach to do it.
Yeah, great. It's been great having you as a guest today, and on our podcast, the Sales Transformation Podcast. And Colin, if people wanted to get in touch with you or reach out to you, how can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Colin.club, Colin, DOTCLUB. Otherwise, just, on LinkedIn, just type in Colin Campbell, entrepreneur, and you'll just send me a LinkedIn.
Okay, great. All righty. So please leave any comments down below. If you enjoyed today's show, head over to victorarocho.com and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just type in Victor Arocho, AROCHO, for more interviews with top entrepreneurs like Colin. Colin, we'd definitely like to have you back on the show because I think there's so much in sales. For a person that says doesn't know sales, you got me. I can keep going. Remember to check out the rest of our videos in this series. Thank you for listening to the Sales Transformation Podcast. And remember, every Friday, we release a new episode of the Sales Transformation Podcast. And that one's with my co-host and a fellow serial entrepreneur, Stephen Running. Well, Colin, thank you again. Everybody have a great selling week. And remember, transformation trumps motivation. You have a great day, Colin. Thank you so much. All righty.